Okay, guys, sorry for yesterday, but a day is wasted for you guys, but not for me. Okay, I'm starting 15-minute timer. She knew wanted to be a scout, so she signed me up for a local troop. I'll still remember putting on that navy blue Cub Scout button. Do oh, Scout button down, drown. One Saturday, I felt proud wearing a uniform and knowing at least for a few hours I could pretend that I was a normal kid. My mom smiled as we headed for the door. My pride, her smile wasn't just because of the damn Cub Scouts. They rose up from deeper places. We were taking action to find something positive for ourselves in a break situation. It was proof that we mattered and that we weren't completely powerless. That's when my father came home from the vermilion room. Where are you two going? He glared at me. I stand at the floor, stared at the floor. My mother cleared her throat. I'm taking David to his first Cub Scout meeting, she said softly. The hell you are! I looked up and he laughed as my eyes welled up with tears. We are going to the track. Within the hour, we'd arrive at Batavia Downs, an old school harness horse racetrack, the type where jockeys ride behind the horses in lightweight buggies. My dad grabbed a racing form as soon we stepped through the gate. For hours, the three of us watched him place bets after bet, chain smoke, drink scotch, and raise holy hell as every pony he bet on finish out of the money. With my dad raging the gambling gods and acting a fool, I tried to make myself as small as possible whenever people walked by. But I still stuck out. I was the only kid in the stands dressed like a Cub Scout. I was probably the only black Cub Scout they'd ever seen, and my uniform was a lie. I was a pretender. Trennis lost thousands of dollars that day, and he wouldn't shut up about it on the drive home. His raspy throat raw from nicotine. My brother and I were in the cramped back seat, and whenever he spat out the window, his phlegm boomeranged into my face. Each drop of his nasty saliva on my skin burned like a venom and intensified my hate. I'd long since learned that the best way to avoid a beatdown was to make myself invisible as possible, avert my eyes, float outside my body, and hope to go unnoticed. It was a practice we'd all honed over the years, but I was done with that shit. I would no longer hide from the devil. That afternoon, as we veered into the highway and headed home, he continued to rave on, and I mad dogged him from the back seat. Have you ever heard the phrase faith over fear? For me, it was hate over fear. He caught my eyes in the rear view mirror. You got something to say? We shouldn't have gone to the track anyway, I said. The brother turned and stared at me like I'd lost my damn mind. My mom squirmed in her seat. Say that one more time. His words came slow, dripping with dread. I didn't say a word, so he started reaching behind the seat trying to smack me. But I was so small it was easy to hide. The car veered left and right as he was half turned in my direction, punching air. He'd barely touched me, which one only stroked his fire. We drove in silence until he caught his breath. When we get home, you're gonna take your clothes off, he said. That's what he'd say when he was ready to bestow a serious beatdown, and there was no avoiding it. I did what I was told. I went into my bedroom and took off my clothes, walked down to the hall to his room, closed the door behind me, turned the lights off, then laid across the corner of the bed with my legs dangling, my torso stretched out in front of me, my ass exposed. That was the protocol, and he designed it for maximum psychological and physical pain. The beatings were often brutal, but the anticipation was the worst part. I couldn't see the door behind me, and he'd take his time letting my dread build. When I heard him open the door, my panic spiked. Even then, the room was so dark I couldn't see much with my peripheral vision, and couldn't prepare for the first smack until his belt hit my skin. It was never just two or three lickings either. There was no particular count, so we never knew when or if he was gonna stop. This beating lasted minutes upon minutes. He started on my butt, but the sting was so bad I blocked it with my hands. So he moved on and started whipping my thighs. When I dropped my hands with my thighs, he swung at my lower back. He belted me dozens of times, and he was breathless, coughing and slick with sweat by the time it was over. I was breathing heavy too, but I wasn't crying. His evil was too real, and my hate gave me courage. I refused to give that motherfucker the satisfaction. I just stood up and looked the devil in his eye, limped to my room and stood in front of a mirror. I was covered in welts from my neck to the crease at the knees. I didn't go to school for several days. When you are getting beat consistently, hope evaporates. You stifle your emotions, but your trauma of gases in unconscious ways. After countless beatings she endured and witnessed, this particular beatdown left my mother in a constant fog, a shell of the woman I remember from few years before. She was distracted and vacant most of the time, except when he called her name. Then she'd hop to like she was his slave. I didn't know until years later that she was considering suicide. My brother and I took our pain out on each other. We'd sit or stand across from one another, and he would throw punches as hard as he could at me. I usually stared out as a game, but he was 4 years older, much stronger, and he connected with all his power. Whenever I'd fall, I'd get up, and he'd hit me again as hard as he could, yelling like a martial arts warrior at the top of his lungs, his face twisted with rage. "You're not hurting me. Is that all you fucking have?" I shot back. I wanted him to know that I could take more pain than he could ever deliver. But when it was time to fall asleep and there was were no more battles to fight, no place to hide, I wet the bed nearly every night. My mother's every day was a lesson in survival. She was told she was worthless, so often she started to believe it. Everything she did was an effort to appease him so he wouldn't beat her sons or whip her ass. But there was invisible tripwires in her world, and sometimes she never knew when or how she set them off until after he slapped the shit out of her. Other times she knew she teed herself up for a vicious beatdown. One day I came home early from school with a nasty earache and laid down on my mother's side of the bed, my left ear throbbing in excruciating pain. Each throb my hate spiked. I knew I wouldn't be going to the doctor because my father didn't approve of spending his money on doctors or dentists. We didn't have health insurance, a pediatrician, or a dentist. If we got sick, injured, or sick, we were told to shake it off because he wasn't down to pay for anything that didn't directly benefit Trunis Goggins. Our health didn't meet that standard, and that pissed me the fuck off. After about a half hour, my mother came upstairs to check on me, and when I rolled into onto my back, she could see blood dripping down the side of my neck and smeared all the pillow. "That's it," she said. "Come with me." She got me out of bed, dressed me, and helped me to her car. But before she could start the engine, my dad chased us down. Where you think you're going?" "The emergency room," she said as she turned the ignition. He reached for the handle, but she peeled out first, leaving him in her dust. Furious, he stormed inside, slammed the door, and called out to my brother, "Son, get me a Johnny Walker." Tunis Junior brought over a bottle of Red Label and a glass with the wet bar. He poured and poured and watched my dad down shot after shot. Each one fueled an inferno. You and David need to be strong, he raved. I'm not raising a bag of faggots, and that's what you will be if you go to doctor every time you get a little boo boo, understand? My brother nodded, petrified. Your last name is Goggins, and we shake it off. According to the doctor we saw that night, my mother got me to the ER just in time. My ear infection was so bad that we waited any longer, and I would have lost my hearing in my left ear for life. She risked her ass to save mine, and we both knew she'd pay for it. We drove home in eerie silence. My dad was still stewing at the kitchen table by the time we turned onto Paris Road, and my brother was still pouring him shots. Prince Jr. feared our father, but he also worshipped the man and was under his spell. As the firstborn son, he was treated better. Tunis would still lash out at him, but in his warped mind, Tunis Jr. was his prince. When you grow up, I'm gonna want you to see you be the man of your house, Tunis told him, and you're gonna see me be a man tonight. Moments after we walked through the front door, Tunis beat our mother senseless, but my brother couldn't watch. Whenever the beatings exploded like a thunderstorm overhead, he'd wait them out in his room. He ignored the darkness because the truth was too heavy for him to carry. I always paid close fucking attention. During the summers, there was no midweek respite from Tunis, but my brother and I learned to hop on our bikes and stay far away from our as long as we could. One day I came home for lunch and entered the house through the garage like normal. My father usually slept deep into the afternoon, so I figured the coast was clear. I was wrong. My father was paranoid. He did enough shady deals to attract some enemies, and he set the alarm after we left the house. When I opened the door, sirens screamed and my stomach dropped. I froze, backed up against the wall, and listened for footsteps. I heard the stairs creak and knew I was fucked. He came downstairs in his brown terry cloth robe, pistol in hand, and crossed from the dining room into the living room, his gun out front. I could see the barrel come around the corner slowly. As soon as he cleared the corner, he could see me standing just 20 feet away. But he didn't drop his weapon. He aimed it right between my eyes. I stared straight at him, blank as possible, my feet anchored to the floorboards. There was no one else in the house, and part of me expected him to pull the trigger, but by this time in my life, I no longer cared if I lived or died. I was an exhausted 8-year-old pack kid, a kid plain old fucking tired of being terrified of my father, and I was sick of Scotland too. Scotland too. After a minute or two, he lowered his weapon and went back upstairs. By now, it was becoming clear that someone was going to die on Paradise Road. My mother knew where Trunis kept his 38. Some days she timed and followed him, envisioned how it would play out. They'd take separate cars to Skateland. She'd grab his gun from beneath the office cushions, sofa cushions before he could get there. Bring us home early, put us to bed, and wait for him by the front door with his gun in hand. When he pulled up, she'd step out the front door and murder him in his driveway, leave his body for the milkman to find. My uncles, her brothers, talked her out of it, but they agreed she needed to do something drastic or she'd be one lying dead. It was an old neighbor who showed her a way. Betty used to live across the street from us. After she moved, they stay in touch. Betty was 20 years old and my mother and I had the wisdom to match. She encouraged my mother to plan her escape weeks in advance. The first step was getting a credit card in her name. That meant she had to re-earn Trini's trust because she needed him to co-sign. Mary also reminded my mother to keep their friendship a secret. For a few weeks, Jackie played Jonas, treating him like she did when she was a 19-year-old beauty with stars in her eyes. She made him believe she worshipped him again, and when she slipped a credit card application, he said he'd be happy to score her a little buying power. When the card arrived in mail, my mother felt its hard plastic edges through the envelope as relief saturated her mind. She held it at arm's length, and okay, I read till page 32. Adios. Time is over.